Welcome back to the Deep Dive, the show where we take a stack of dense sources, your research, your notes, your articles, and we distill the most critical nuggets of knowledge into fast, crystal clear understanding.
And today, we're tackling a topic that is, it's just so universally critical, but at the same time, it's one that people so frequently ignore.
Right, personal finance.
It's the topic everyone thinks they understand, or, maybe actively avoids.
Yeah, that's probably closer to it.
If people hear personal finance and their mind immediately jumps to budgeting or maybe, oh, I need to buy a stock. But as our extensive sources show, it is so much bigger than that.
Infinitely more.
We're talking about the comprehensive disciplined financial management that you, the individual or, the family unit, perform to budget, save, and spend your money in a really controlled way.
And that phrase controlled manner, that's the key, isn't it? Because it implies you have to be proactive. You have to plan for every financial risk, every future life event that could possibly get thrown at you. I mean, looking at the sheer scope of the material we went through for this dive covers everything. From the absolute fundamentals, your checking and savings accounts, all the way to complex products.
Things like health, life, and disability insurance.
Right, and then high-level investment strategies with stocks, bonds, real estate.
Yeah.
And then you have all the tedious but totally necessary details of managing your credit score, using income tax advantages, and making sure that retirement nest egg is actually protected.
It really is the definition of a holistic approach. It connects what you spend your money on today to your ability to survive 30 years from now.
So our mission for you today is clear. We're going to extract the fundamental, sort of universal principles that anchor the entire field. Then we really need to understand the urgent necessity behind mastering these concepts in the modern age.
And then we'll detail the critical, actionable planning areas.
Yeah, we want you to walk away from this deep dive thoroughly informed and, ready to act.
So let's start by looking at the modern landscape.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can even get to the how, the mechanics of it all, we absolutely have to tackle the why. Our sources highlight several crucial, almost seismic shifts in the global economy and in society that make taking active control of your finances not just smart, but an absolute necessity for your long-term stability.
The first, and maybe the most painful hurdle to talk about, is the enormous global gap in formal financial education and literacy. It's staggering. The sources cite these OECD studies, which consistently show disturbingly low financial literacy rates, and not just in developing nations, but even in highly developed, wealthy countries.
It's a knowledge gap that feels like it's engineered by the system itself. We see entire nations, like Japan, where formal financial education just isn't a requirement in their schools.
And even in the U.S., where there's a massive conversation around this,
All the time.
the standardization is still just woefully inadequate. As of 2024, our sources highlight that just under 30% of U.S. high schoolers still do not require a personal finance course for graduation.
That's a staggering deficit for an adult who's about to enter the most financially complex period in all of human history.
And that deficit has severe, very tangible consequences, particularly for young adults. Without that foundational knowledge, they become prey to high-interest debt traps. They sign up for predatory lending products.
And they're more likely to make these huge, irreversible mistakes with their first car loan or their student loans.
Exactly. Conversely, the impact of education, when it is provided, is striking. The source material notes a very strong positive correlation.
So what does it show?
Students who received formal financial education, specifically graduate students, in one of the studies we looked at, they average significantly higher credit scores later in life.
Okay, that makes sense.
And what's more, they secure more favorable loan conditions because they actually understand the metrics of creditworthiness. They know how the game is played.
So this really illustrates the core goal for you, the listener. If the school system isn't going to teach it, you as the individual must prioritize learning personal finance early.
It's about building literacy, right? Establishing those planning skills and developing that critical, rigorous ability to differentiate between a true financial need versus a financial want.
And that's often the gateway to debt, isn't it? That confusion between need and want.
It's the absolute entry point.
So beyond the education problem, we're also facing these massive societal shifts that are impacting how long our careers last. Our sources make a really strong case for this phenomenon that we're calling a shortened employable age.
This is truly critical. We are living longer, but our careers may actually be shrinking.
That's a terrifying thought.
It is. And a major driver is the rise of automation and redundancy. Jobs that rely on repeatable manual intervention or, mechanical skills are increasingly being handled by robotics, AI, or advanced software.
Right.
And this just systematically reduces the demand for certain types of consistent human labor on a global scale.
Okay. That's understandable for, say, a factory floor, but the risk has expanded way beyond that, hasn't it?
Absolutely. The risk has migrated straight to the office. Our sources highlight the vulnerability of middle management. The workers who are responsible for synthesis, summarization, routine decision-making.
The knowledge workers.
Exactly. If employees in that tier haven't committed to upskilling, to moving into areas that require complex, non-repeatable human judgment, they're often very easily replaceable by new, cheaper talent.
Talent that's already equipped with the latest AI-powered tech.
Precisely.
And this is all compounded by just basic economic realities, right? Like global labor shifts.
Def-
Companies are constantly moving jobs from high labor cost countries like the US or Western Europe to regions with lower labor costs.
All to maintain profit margins. It puts this constant sustained pressure on older, higher-earning workforces in those established economies.
And we also have to factor in what the sources call cyclical industry risk.
Yes. Think about massive sectors like automobile manufacturing or heavy construction or commodity chemicals. These industries are extremely sensitive to the overall health of the global economy.
So when things slow down,
When economies stagnate or enter a recession or, face the instability from geopolitical conflict, these sectors are the first to suffer severe contractions.
which translates directly into job losses, the sources use the term rationalize the workforce.
Which is just business jargon for cutting employees.
Right. It's a quick response to stay solvent. So the sudden potential for job loss suggests that the legal retirement age, say 60 or 65, is slowly becoming practically shorter.
Employment could end closer to 55, or even 50 for many people.
The implication of that is just profound. It accelerates the necessity to plan for and systematically build a substantial retirement nest egg, and you have to start much earlier than previous generations ever had to worry about.
Often starting in your early 20s. And that necessity is only magnified by the next point, increased life expectancy, or what we call longevity risk.
Right. Thanks to these breathtaking developments in healthcare and nutrition, people today just look so much older. The average life expectancy has shifted dramatically, often from the late 60s to 81 and upwards, globally.
So let's put those two things together. If you combine a potentially shorter working life, let's say your career ends unexpectedly at 55 with a significantly increased lifespan, you might be facing 30, 35, or even 40 years in retirement.
And the traditional financial equation, it used to assume, what, a 15 to 20-year retirement?
At most. Doubling that time frame means the retirement nest egg you need is exponentially larger. It just reinforces the critical need for a sophisticated, carefully managed portfolio that can withstand decades of you pulling money out of it.
And just in case we weren't stressed enough, we have the rising burden of medical expenses.
Our sources are unanimous on this point. There has been an exponential rise in costs across the board for prescription medicine, hospital care, long-term nursing care, specialized care, and particularly geriatric care all over the world.
And critically, many of these costs are not fully covered by insurance, no matter what country you live in. The individual burden is still immense everywhere. It's just structured differently, but it's always high.
Yeah, let's break down those market differences because it really illustrates the complexity that you're facing.
Okay, let's start with the U.S.
In the U.S. context, coverage relies on this sort of tripartite system.
Yeah.
Your employer, private insurers, or federal programs like Medicare and Medicaid. But the sources raise these really serious sustainability concerns about the soaring U.S. fiscal deficit and the huge aging senior population.
And that demographic reality, it translates directly into a continued financial burden for the individual, even when they have coverage.
Absolutely. You're still facing high copays, massive deductibles you have to meet every single year, and therapy exclusions, where the insurer just decides a specific treatment is medically unnecessary.
Okay, now let's look at a different model. What about the highly regulated systems like in the European Union, where most medical care is nationally reimbursed?
Well, that provides a strong safety net, for sure, but the national reimbursement budgets are very tightly controlled by the government.
And the result of that strict control
Is that newer, often expensive cutting-edge therapies, things like gene therapies, advanced oncology treatments, are frequently excluded from the national formularies. So patients often have to pay out of pocket, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, to access that critical medicine. They're effectively bypassing the government system entirely.
And finally, what about rapidly developing economies like India or China?
In large parts of those nations, the vast majority of medical expenses are simply paid out of pocket. There's often no overarching government social security system that provides comprehensive, end-to-end medical coverage.
So this global reality illustrates an essential, just a foundational financial need. You have to have adequate insurance coverage, medical, accidental, critical illness, and life insurance.
And alongside that, you need a necessary, untouchable emergency corpus, a fund. This fund isn't for investment, it's for survival when life throws an expensive curveball at you.
Okay, so that's the why. It's urgent. Let's dig into the how.
What's fascinating here is, personal finance, as a rigorous modern discipline, it isn't some new digital invention. It has these deep academic roots in disciplines like home economics and behavioral theory.
Right.
And understanding its intellectual history is really the only way to understand why the core, simple advice remains so effective, even with all the complexity in the world today.
Most people probably picture old, dusty textbooks when you mention the history of finance, but the field actually originated from things like family economics and consumer economics.
Yeah, things that were taught in universities as part of home economics for over a century. It was originally just about household management. How do you run a home efficiently?
So it was driven by social scientists looking at how families allocated scarce resources, but the real intellectual shift, the moment that really defines modern personal finance, that came after World War II.
That breakthrough arrived in 1947, and it was courtesy of Herbert A. Simon, who would later go on to win the Nobel Prize.
So what did he suggest that changed everything?
He introduced this really revolutionary behavioral insight that decision makers, and we just mean average people, do not always make the best mathematically optimal financial decisions.
Which flies in the face of traditional economics.
Completely. Traditional economics always assumed people were these rational actors, constantly optimizing for maximum profit. Simon basically showed that's nonsense.
And why don't we make the best decisions?
Well, due to limited educational resources, cognitive biases, and crucially, our own personal inclinations and emotions. And that single realization moved the study of financial management beyond pure mathematics and statistical optimization, and it placed it squarely into the realm of human psychology, which is why behavioral finance is so integral today.
And this shift is what justifies the entire movement towards simple, actionable advice, even when the underlying markets are hyper-complex.
Exactly.
If people can't handle complexity, you give them simplicity that works most of the time.
Precisely. This behavioral foundation means the research is based on how humans interact with resources, that's social exchange theory, and critically, andragogy, which is the theory of adult learning.
So it acknowledges that adults learn best through practical, applicable advice, not abstract formulas.
Exactly right.
So this foundation leads to some fundamental ethical and behavioral mandates for planning. What do the sources consider to be the philosophical guidelines here?
There's a suggestion that planning should adhere to the diligence of a good family father.
What does that mean?
It means prudence, caution, and long-term responsibility. Morally, people shouldn't develop an attachment to the idea of money itself. Money is a tool, not a goal.
Okay.
And critically, when you're investing, the mandate is to maintain a medium to long-term horizon and to deliberately avoid unnecessary market speculation or what they call hazards in expected return.
That's great philosophy, but let's bring it down to earth. The sources really emphasize that truly universal principles are incredibly difficult to define because everyone's situation is so different.
It is. Your required consumption, your income, your overall wealth, it's unique to you. Plus, tax codes and financial regulations are country-specific, and market conditions are constantly changing.
Which is why personalized advice often requires a professional.
It often does. But the beauty of the behavioral focus is that there are these simple rules that manage those human inclinations we just talked about.
And this is where the famous index card advice comes in, right?
Exactly. University of Chicago professor Harold Pollack and writer Helene Olin boiled down decades of complex financial research in just a few core, simple rules.
And they argue that these foundational principles, which work really effectively, particularly in the U.S. financial context, could fit on a 3x5 index card.
And the brilliance of these rules is that they address the emotional, non-rational side of finance first.
Okay, give us the list. What are the core rules that anchor modern personal finance?
The first rule and the absolute foundation of financial stability is pay off all credit card balances in full every month.
Every single month.
Every month. This directly addresses that human tendency toward instant gratification and the devastating power of compound interest working against you.
That one rule alone could save people thousands over a lifetime. What's next for stability?
Second, dedicate a fixed mandatory portion of your income, somewhere between 10 to 20% of your post-tax income, to savings and investments. This is the discipline of paying yourself first.
Okay.
Third, create an emergency fund that can last at least 6 months. This is that crucial buffer against the modern risks we just discussed, like the sudden loss of a job.
So that covers the immediate stability. Now, what about long-term growth and tax advantage?
Fourth, maximize contributions to tax-advantaged funds. That means fully utilizing government-sponsored structures like 401k, retirement funds, individual retirement accounts or IRAs, and 529 education savings plans. The government is essentially offering you a substantial, guaranteed tax break to save. You have to take it.
And Rule 5 focuses on how to actually invest those savings.
Yes, and this is where most novices make their biggest mistakes. Rule 5 is, when investing, avoid trading individual securities.
So don't try to pick the next hot stock.
Don't do it.
Hmm.
Instead, use low-cost, diversified index mutual funds or exchange-traded funds, ETFs, that passively track the entire market. This minimizes your fees, and it vastly reduces the single stock risk you're taking on.
And finally, the critical advice if you decide to engage a professional.
If you hire a financial advisor, you must require them to commit to a fiduciary duty. This is a legal standard, and it ensures they must act only in your best financial interest, rather than recommending products that pay them the highest sales commission.
Fiduciary duty, that's non-negotiable for serious advice.
Non-negotiable.
So we have the urgency and we have the philosophy. How do we put this all into motion? The sources are very clear. You have to follow a framework. The entire process of personal finance is a dynamic 5-step cycle that demands constant review and revision.
It's not a project, it's a living cycle. The process starts with step 1, assessment, which is basically gathering the snapshot of your current reality. You can't chart a course if you don't know your starting coordinates.
And this means compiling 2 simplified financial statements.
Precisely. First, the balance sheet, which gives you your net worth. This lists all your personal assets, everything you own, like your house, your car, stocks, cash, minus all your personal liabilities, which are the debts you owe.
So credit card debt, bank loans, mortgages.
Right. And the second statement is the income statement, which provides the household cash flow. This is a simple calculation. Your total expected income sources minus all your expected expenses within the same year.
This is where people get that immediate wake-up call.
It is. The purpose of this assessment is crucial.
Yeah.
It determines your current financial health, and it provides the necessary data points to calculate the degree of work required and the timing of when your goals can actually be accomplished. It moves your planning from "I hope" to "I know."
Once you know where you stand, step 2 is goal setting, determining the target. Financial planning requires setting multiple realistic goals, spanning both the short-term and the long-term horizons.
A long-term goal, as we discussed, might be retiring at age 65 with a substantial nest egg. A short-term goal might be, saving up the deductible for your health insurance plan within the next 6 months.
Common adult goals are paying off high-interest debt, investing for retirement, covering future college costs,
and planning for catastrophic medical expenses.
So once you know where you are and where you want to go, step 3 is plan creation, formulating the detailed strategy. This is your instruction manual.
And this is where the numbers from step 1 are used to construct actionable steps for step 2. The plan has to include very specific actions. It might mean deciding to reduce expenses by a fixed 5% across non-essential categories, or committing to increasing your income through a career advancement or a side hustle.
Or earmarking a specific dollar amount for investing monthly into a certain instrument.
Exactly. Then comes step 4, execution. This is where those behavioral principles take center stage, and this is typically the hardest part for everyone. Execution requires unwavering discipline, perseverance against temptation, and often genuine sacrifice of immediate pleasures.
And very few people can execute a complex plan alone successfully. This is where leveraging external support isn't just common, it's often necessary.
It is. You might engage professionals like a CPA for your taxes, a certified financial planner for holistic planning, an investment advisor for your portfolio, or a lawyer for estate planning. They provide the structure and that external accountability that we all need.
And finally, we hit step 5, monitoring and reassessment. This is the essential feedback loop that prevents your plan from becoming obsolete the moment your life changes.
You have to monitor the plan at regular predetermined intervals monthly, quarterly to determine if you are actually on track.
Right.
If the market shifts or if your income changes or if you acquire a major liability like a new mortgage, this information has to be evaluated to make potential adjustments.
The sources really stress the importance of making monitoring a habit. They note that an annual comprehensive review, ideally with a professional, keeps you well positioned. It's the key mechanism to prepare for those sudden curveballs life throws, ensuring your plan remains achievable even when circumstances change dramatically.
Okay, so this raises an important question. How do those 5 abstract steps translate into the actionable, tactical strategies you need for financial success?
Right, the details.
The Financial Planning Standards Board breaks the entire field down into 11 critical, measurable areas of focus. And some of these are far more complex than a simple monthly budget spreadsheet.
Let's run through these 11 areas, starting with the nuts and bolts of daily money management.
Area A is financial position and cash management. We already covered the foundation, establishing your financial position by analyzing your net worth and household cash flow. But cash management is what the sources call the soul of financial planning.
That's a strong claim. Why is rigorously tracking cash flow so fundamental?
Because it reveals the truth about your behavior. Most people know exactly what their gross annual income is, but very, very few diligently track where every single dollar actually goes. That rigorous analysis of cash flow is the essential wake-up call. It forces you to confront your discretionary spending, the forgotten subscriptions, the impulse buys, the daily coffee habit.
It transforms the abstract idea of, I should save more, into the concrete reality of, I spent $500 last month on delivery food alone, and that $500 should have been invested.
That is it. Exactly. Without tracking expenses, you are managing your money completely blind. Cash flow analysis identifies exactly where your money is leaking, and it reveals immediate, actionable opportunities for savings and investment, often without you needing to earn a single extra dollar.
Okay, so once that cash is managed, the single biggest obstacle to preserving wealth is often tax.
Area B, tax planning. Our sources point out that income tax is typically the single largest household expense over the course of an adult's working life.
That's incredible to think about.
It is. And this is where planning becomes so crucial. Managing your taxes is absolutely not about avoiding them entirely, which is illegal. It is about controlling when and how much is paid by legally utilizing the systems the government has already put in place.
Right. The government gives you incentives, tax deductions, and credits precisely because they want you to take certain actions.
Like saving for retirement or buying a home. And the more income you earn, the more critical this planning becomes.
Why is that?
Because most modern governments use a progressive tax system. This means that as your taxable income grows, a higher marginal rate of tax applies to that additional income.
So understanding and aggressively using every legal tax break available, like maximizing contributions to tax-advantaged accounts or leveraging specialized credits, it becomes significantly more impactful the more money you earn.
It's fundamental to long-term wealth preservation.
All right, Area C is investment and accumulation goals. This is the fun part, the forward-looking strategy. Accumulating enough money for major milestones.
Right, like a house, paying for education, starting a business, or saving for retirement. But there is a constant looming threat to all of these goals.
Inflation.
Inflation risk. The rate of price increases over time is the major risk to achieving your accumulation goals. If your money just sits there, it loses purchasing power every single year.
That seems like a massive contradiction, though. We need high returns to beat inflation, but we're told to reduce our risk. How do the sources reconcile that core tension for the average investor?
They reconcile it through mathematics and smart allocation. To combat inflation, your investment portfolio has to generate a higher rate of return, which inherently subjects the portfolio to higher risk. And financial planners use complex tools to figure this out, like net present value, NPV calculators.
Okay, can you break down NPV for us? What is that?
Certainly. NPV basically answers this question. How much money do I need to save today, and what rate of return do I need, so that after factoring in decades of inflation, that money will actually buy the $1 million house or cover the retirement expenses I want 20 years from now?
So it projects the future cost in today's dollars.
Exactly.
So how is that necessary higher risk managed, especially for someone who isn't a professional trader?
It's managed via asset allocation. This is the absolute key to portfolio risk management. You diversify your investment risk and opportunity by prescribing a percentage allocation across non-correlated asset classes. Stocks, which are high risk, high reward, bonds for medium risk and stability, cash for safety, and alternative investments like real estate or gold.
And that allocation, it has to be specific to the individual, right?
Absolutely. The allocation must align perfectly with the investor's risk profile, which varies dramatically based on your age, your time horizon, and your personal attitude towards volatility.
So a younger person can take on more risk than someone nearing retirement.
Generally, yes. A common rule of thumb for aggressive investors is 100 minus your age to determine the percentage of your portfolio that should be in stocks, with the rest in safer assets like bonds.
Before we move on, there's a critical nuance in the sources regarding assets. Depreciating assets.
Yes, this is often overlooked in personal net worth calculations. Depreciating assets, your car, your boat, any equipment, they do not make you money. They are consumption items that lose value over time or with use.
And they need to be accounted for.
They do, often via a simplified accounting concept called accumulated depreciation.
What's the practical takeaway there for the listener?
The practical takeaway is this. You need to set aside money periodically to account for that loss in value. You're essentially creating a sinking fund for the item's eventual replacement.
So if your car is worth $30,000 today, but will be useless in 10 years?
You need to be saving $3,000 per year just to ensure you can replace that asset when its useful life runs out. Otherwise, its replacement will hit your future cash flow like a bomb.
Next up, Area D real estate planning. Shelter is a basic human need, but the decision to buy or rent and how to finance it is arguably the most financially impactful decision an individual ever makes.
It is extremely complex. It involves mortgages, insurance, maintenance, property taxes, location variables. We need a clear buy versus rent comparison here.
Okay, if you choose the buy side, what are the primary pros and the hidden financial costs?
Well, the pros are you build equity over time, which acts as a sort of forced savings mechanism. It improves your credit history, and it gives you long-term stability and predictability.
But the costs.
The costs are extensive and often underestimated. You have the initial down payment, the relentless monthly mortgage payment, repair and maintenance costs, which are 100% on you, potential homeowners association fees, utilities, insurance, and the recurring burden of property taxes.
And on the rent side?
Renting offers maximum mobility. It eliminates the worry about maintenance or real estate taxes, allowing you to quickly move for career opportunities, but you still have significant ongoing costs. Rent payments, which often increase annually, utilities, and various fees like parking or pet deposits.
And the big financial downside is that every dollar spent is pure expense. You build zero equity.
Zero.
When buying, financing is paramount, and the choice between mortgage structures involves a significant risk assessment.
Absolutely. Most people opt for a 15 or 30-year plan. The fixed-rate mortgage is the safest option. It maintains a constant payment amount for the life of the loan.
But then there's the ARM.
The adjustable rate mortgage, or ARM, means the rate, and thus your payment, can change based on market fluctuations. Prospective borrowers have to assess their long-term financial stability and their credit score very carefully before choosing an ARM. An unexpected rate hike can make the house completely unaffordable.
And the value of the home itself isn't fixed. It's driven by a whole host of critical location and quality variables.
That's right. These factors determine the price today and the future value tomorrow. Whether the location is dense urban or quiet rural, the length of the commute, the quality of public schools, neighborhood safety, local amenities, and the size of the land. All these non-financial variables have to be considered through a financial lens of long-term investment.
Area E is credit management. This truly is the double-edged sword of personal finance. It's capable of both unlocking immense opportunity and inflicting catastrophic damage. Define it simply for us.
A line of credit is fundamentally receiving goods or services now, prior to payment, with a promise of future repayment, which usually incurs interest and fees. This includes unsecured debt like credit cards and personal loans, and secured debt like mortgages and car loans.
Used properly, what are the pros of leveraging credit?
The most crucial pro is building credit. Your credit score, that 300 to 850 number, is your financial reputation. It's determined primarily by 5 factors, with payment history and the amounts you owe being the most important. A strong score means lenders will grant you lower interest rates and access to more capital.
And beyond the score itself?
Well, credit is essential for large purchases. The ability to buy now, pay later, which includes houses and cars. It also acts as a safety net. It can temporarily offset financial burdens in an emergency if your emergency fund is depleted.
And of course, the perks. Rewards, travel points, sign-on bonuses.
But only if you're disciplined enough to pay off the balance in full every month.
I know so many people who get sucked into that travel points trap, convinced they're beating the system when they're actually holding a balance for 3 months, negating all the rewards with interest.
It's a very common trap.
What are the major cons of misuse?
The downsides are severe. First, overuse. Credit facilitates spending money you don't actually have, which can quickly lead to financial distress and dependency on high-interest debt. Second, the lender profits via massive interest and fees. If you hold balances, you pay back significantly more money than you originally borrowed, sometimes double or triple the principal.
And once that debt spiral begins, it can quickly get out of control.
That's the third con, overwhelming payments. High debt accrues large minimum monthly payments. If those minimums consume too much of your household cash flow, it severely limits your ability to save, to invest, or even to handle minor emergencies, and it just throws the entire financial plan into chaos. Education here is vital.
Now we transition from accumulation and debt to protection. Area F is adequate protection insurance. This is often the most confusing area for listeners.
It is. It's the analysis of financial risk, liability, death, health, disability. The goal is to determine the most cost-effective coverage for transferring that risk away from you. This is essential for financial planning because one catastrophic event, a major illness, a death, a car accident, can instantly wipe out decades of accumulation.
Let's focus on life insurance, as it's a necessary component of planning for most people with dependents. What are the core differences the listener needs to understand?
You really need to understand term life versus whole life. Term life is pure insurance. It covers you for a specific period, say 20 years. It's simple, it's inexpensive, and it's designed to cover your working years when your financial obligations like your mortgage and your children are highest.
And whole life.
Whole life is significantly more complex and more expensive. It covers you for your entire life and includes a savings or investment component, what's called a cash value. While it sounds appealing, the high fees and low returns often make it a poor investment choice for the average person.
So what do most planners recommend?
Most financial planners recommend buying cheaper term life insurance and then investing the difference in cost in a separate low-fee account.
What's the most overlooked type of insurance?
Disability insurance. This is arguably the most critical and the most neglected. If you get sick or injured and you cannot work, disability insurance replaces a portion of your income.
Right.
The sources note that a young person is far more likely to become disabled than to die before retirement, yet most people only carry life insurance. If you are reliant on your income, you need disability coverage.
And finally, what about liability? We hear about umbrella policies.
An umbrella policy is a layer of liability insurance that sits above your existing home and auto liability limits. If you are sued for millions after a major car accident, your standard auto policy might only cover, say, $300,000. The umbrella policy kicks in to cover the remaining gap, protecting your accumulated assets from being seized in a lawsuit.
So it's essential, inexpensive protection for anyone who has accumulated significant net worth.
Absolutely essential.
Area G, retirement planning, is really the culmination of accumulation. It's developing a plan to distribute assets, your retirement nest egg, to meet income shortfalls over your non-working decades.
And the core mechanic here is utilizing those government-allowed tax-managed structures. We mentioned 401ks and IRAs. What is the single most powerful tool for the average employee?
The employer match.
The 401k employer match. This is literally free money. If your employer offers a 50% match up to the first 6% of your salary you contribute, you must contribute at least that 6% to secure the match. It's an immediate, guaranteed 50% return on that portion of your investment, which is unmatched anywhere else in the market.
Let's clarify the choice between retirement account types, Roth versus traditional.
The difference really lies in when you pay the tax. Traditional accounts, like a 401k or IRA, are funded with pre-tax dollars. That means you get a tax break today, but you pay ordinary income tax when you withdraw the money in retirement.
And Roth.
Roth accounts are funded with after-tax dollars. So you get no tax rate today, but all qualified growth and withdrawals in retirement are completely tax-free.
So which one is right?
Well, it's a gamble on future tax rates. If you believe you will be in a higher tax bracket in retirement than you are today, the Roth is generally better. If you believe you'll be in a lower tax bracket, the traditional account is generally better.
So most younger workers who expect higher income later, they probably benefit from the Roth structure.
Generally, yes. And for the listener who is already retired or nearing retirement, there's a key financial constraint they need to prepare for.
What's that?
They need to understand required minimum distributions, or RMDs. The government does not let you avoid paying tax forever. Once you reach a certain age, currently 73, you have to start taking mandatory distributions from your traditional retirement accounts, and these distributions are taxed as ordinary income. Planning for R&Ds is a critical function of late-stage retirement planning.
Area H estate planning. This is the least comfortable topic for people to face, yet failure to plan here can just destroy a family's financial future.
This deals with planning the disposition of your assets after death. The primary financial goal is twofold. First, to avoid state or federal estate taxes, and second, to ensure the maximum amount of your assets are distributed to your intended heirs, your family, friends, or charities, and not tied up in the courts.
What happens when people fail to plan adequately?
They force their family into probate. Probate is the legal process where the court validates the will, if one exists, and supervises the distribution of assets. It is expensive, it is time-consuming, often taking years, and the proceedings are public.
And if there's no will?
If there's no will, your state's laws dictate who gets what, often completely contrary to what your wishes would have been.
So what is the main difference between using a simple will and establishing a trust?
A will ensures the court knows where your assets should go, but the assets still go through probate. A trust, particularly a revocable living trust, is a legal structure that owns your assets during your lifetime and dictates where they go upon your death, allowing those assets to bypass probate entirely. For anyone with significant assets or complexity, a trust is usually the superior planning vehicle.
And finally, where do people mistakenly rely on their will?
They forget about non-probate assets. Life insurance policies, 401ks, IRAs, joint bank accounts, all of these pass directly to the named beneficiaries, completely bypassing the will and the probate process.
So if your will says your house goes to your son, but your life insurance beneficiary is still your ex-spouse?
The ex-spouse gets the payout. You have to coordinate your beneficiary designations with your estate planning documents. It's a critical, often missed step.
Moving back to the behavioral side, Area I is delayed gratification. This is the ability to resist an immediate, smaller reward in favor of waiting for a later, often substantially greater, reward.
This sounds like a core life skill, but how does it manifest financially?
It manifests constantly. Delayed gratification is the ability to skip upgrading your car today to save the money necessary to purchase a revenue-generating asset, like an investment property, tomorrow. It's the essential tool for overcoming lifestyle inflation.
Lifestyle inflation. The tendency for expenses to rise proportionally with income.
Exactly. If you can't delay gratification, every pay raise you get will simply be consumed by new wants, leaving your net worth completely stagnant.
Area J is revisiting the written financial plan regularly. This just cycles back to step 5 of the process, emphasizing the critical need to make monitoring a habit.
We stress this because life doesn't stand still. Marriage, divorce, children, job changes, new tax laws, massive market swings, all these necessitate immediate planning adjustments.
An annual comprehensive financial planning review is the best practice for staying informed and ensuring that the strategic map you set 5 years ago is still relevant to your goals today.
And the final critical area, Area K, is education planning, specifically focused on saving for college or advanced schooling.
The need for proper planning here is immense, particularly in the U.S. context, to avoid pitfalls related to financial aid. For instance, parents need to be strategic about where they save money.
How so?
Savings held in a child's name, like in a custodial UGMA or UTMA account, are assessed at a much higher rate during the financial aid calculation process, the FFSEA, than assets held in the parent's name. This could potentially jeopardize the child's opportunity to obtain necessary grants.
Which makes the 529 plan critical, right?
Absolutely. The 529 plan is a tax-advantaged investment account specifically designed for educational expenses. The growth is tax-free, and the withdrawals are tax-free if used for qualified educational costs. It is the premier way to save for college without severely impacting financial aid calculations, provided the funds are managed correctly and the owner understands the spending rules.
Okay, so that's the framework, but let's talk about education.
What's fascinating here is we've established that personal finance literacy is crucial, yet despite 99% of adults in major polls agreeing that it should be mandatory in schools, we see this really conflicting evidence about the effectiveness of those mandatory educational programs.
That brings us back to the information paradox. We have vast resources available. The American federal government, numerous financial authorities, they've all provided free, high-quality educational materials online for years.
And yet, a Bank of America poll showed that 42% of adults felt discouraged, and 28% found personal finance difficult because of the sheer vast amount of online information.
The volume itself becomes a barrier to entry. People are paralyzed by choice and complexity.
Which leads them directly into the core debate. Does mandatory education actually translate into effective behavior?
What does the evidence say for success?
The Bell, Gorin, and Hogarth study from 2009 showed a strong correlation. Educated high school students were significantly more likely to use formal spending plans, more likely to have savings accounts, they had fewer overdrafts, and were more likely to pay off their credit card balances in full. This strongly suggests that literacy training provides necessary operational knowledge.
But then you have the counterpoint, which highlights the behavioral tension we discussed at the very beginning.
Indeed. The Cole and Shastry Harvard Business School study, also from 2009, found that there was no statistically significant difference in saving behaviors between U.S. states that had enforced a financial literacy mandate and those without one.
So they had the knowledge, but their actions did not change.
Exactly.
Which perhaps brings us right back to Herbert Simon's insight. Personal inclinations, discipline, and emotional biases play a massive role, regardless of the education you receive. Knowledge without discipline is useless.
It seems that discipline, delayed gratification, and perseverance remain the most valuable and simultaneously the hardest to teach components of personal wealth creation.
Fortunately, we do have tools to help automate and enforce that discipline. The source material points to the long-standing value of traditional personal finance magazines like Kiplinger for providing timely, targeted advice.
And crucially, the sources emphasize the necessity of leveraging budgeting software packages and personal finance apps.
These tools are essential resources because they automate the monitoring and assessment process that people often find so difficult or overwhelming.
Right. They take the labor out of tracking cash flow, which allows you to focus on the high-level strategy and execution.
This has been an incredibly thorough deep dive. To synthesize what we've covered, personal finance is so much more than mere budgeting. It is a holistic, disciplined, and dynamic management process that's essential for mitigating a whole host of compounding modern risks, a shortened career, extreme longevity, and ever-rising medical costs.
And the key takeaway is that the core of sound personal finance is often remarkably simple principles. That index card advice applied with long-term perseverance. And it's all anchored by rigorous, regular monitoring and reassessment of your net worth and your cash flow.
And as we close, let's leave you with this final provocative thought for your own continued planning, focusing on the area of maximum financial leverage. Given that tax planning is fundamentally about reducing your single largest household expense by leveraging government incentives like deductions and credits, how effectively are you scrutinizing and utilizing the progressive tax system right now to achieve your long-term accumulation goals?
It really is the ultimate measure of whether you are actively controlling your finances and capitalizing on opportunity or just passively letting the system control you.
We hope this deep dive has provided you with the foundational clarity needed to master that dynamic cycle. We'll see you next time.